Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Furthermore, welcome back to my second entry into my Alu is Urki series. Now, Alu is Urki means something along the lines of may it be of help, and as I have discussed in my previous video, in this particular series, this is meant to be a series entirely devoted and dedicated to the magical healing arts, insofar as that I, as a person, have knowledge of various types of healing magic, healing rituals, etc. So this video is, as you can tell by the title, about ritual baths. This video is made in celebration of finally removing the familial curse that I mentioned in my video on my runic initiation into the Elder Fufag rune of Lagus. This familial curse has plagued my family for several hundred years, or a few hundred years, I should say. I believe it's been about 200-300 years that this curse was placed. So this curse was placed on my mom's side of the family, and as I mentioned in Lagos, I have had some limited success in dealing with this particular curse through means of taking of, you guessed it, ritual baths. So my first series of ritual baths consisted of 9 baths with a variety of herbs, candles, incense, etc. That was supposed to rid me entirely of the curse in question. Now, this curse was placed very professionally, very adequately, I would say, to give my adversaries in that regard, even though those adversaries were hundreds of years old and now no longer are alive in those current incarnations. It was a skilled, very well placed curse. It was a curse that has lasted, as I mentioned, through hundreds of years. It was something that has completely ruined and wrecked my mother's side of the family. My mother's side of the family in the Netherlands. Most of my family still lives in the Netherlands, of course, as I was born and raised there, but eventually came to the United States, so where I currently live. So they started out as nobility, and then were cursed by a very large group of people, which of course is a strength in and of itself, because the more practitioners you have, the more people willing to partake in something like this, the more strength it will by default, due to the amount of energy at the disposal of the practitioners as a result of this, that it will have. So this curse I was finally able to undo with the help of 9 further ritual baths on top of the 9 ones that had already transpired. And I used the same setup, the same candles, the same verses that I cited as part of my Galder, as part of my word magic. I should say, I suppose, for those of you who are not familiar with what that particular word means, Galder is exertive magic. It is usually taken to be magic done with speech, with words, which is one of my practices that I utilize in my personal practices and my personal rites and my personal magical endeavors, shall we say. So, 18 baths, 2 times 9. 9 being, of course, in the Germanic tradition, a very sacred number, as there are 9 worlds, and threefold free. Free is in pretty much every religion, in every spiritual path, be they pagan, Abrahamic, what have you, a very significant number, of course. So 2 times 9, 18. And then followed on the next day, as a sort of added ritual, there was a ritual that took place on the 1st of August. So it is the 4th of August now at the time of me recording this, so that was 3 days ago. And Freyfaxi is, as some of you Germanic pagans, heathens, or Norse pagans, or whatever you want to call yourselves. I personally, as you may know if you have followed this channel for a while now, Norse is under the umbrella of Germanic, because the Scandinavians are, of course, descended from the Germanic tribes, the same as people from my region of the world, which is, northwestern Europe, such as in Germany, the Netherlands, etc. And well, basically on the 1st of August, on Freyfaxi, the holiday of Yngvi Frey, the brother of Freya, the god Frey, or Freyr, if you will, his holiday, and during my beginnings of my initiation into the rune of Ingwaz, as I have, of course, finished Lagus, after Lagus comes Ingwaz, which I am now being initiated in, I finally managed to rid myself of this vile, evil, nasty curse. Not without massive sacrifice, mind you. I had to give up a shit ton of energy. I had to give up a shit ton of, well, uh, yeah, basically a lot of things were sacrificed, shall we say. That is not to mention that I am not glad that it was done, because I did, with that energy, enlist a lot of deities. I enlisted the help of Odin, of Morgan, who, by the way, I will very shortly be uploading a video on. The Morgan, the Celtic Irish deity, the Morgan. And I enlisted the help of Inari Okami from the Japanese Shinto pantheon, who I also will be, in very short order, be uploading a video on as my devotion to them, and as partially as gratitude for various things that I have worked with them, worked on with them, I should say, excuse me, and various other deities, such as, of course, Frey, who assisted with the ritual on the 1st of August on his own holiday, which was basically a meal utilizing cooking magic to devour a rabbit, because it was my understanding that a rabbit was slain, sacrifice, a blood sacrifice, in the facilitation of this curse originally. So my group and I, or at least my friend and I, who I currently live with, who is also a practitioner in that said group of mine, they basically decided that, well, okay, so if you are cursed by a curse that utilized a rabbit as a sacrifice, and a rabbit represents fertility, if it represents fortune, if it represents good luck and positivity, because a rabbit's paw is said to be a symbol of good luck. The goddess Ostara, of course, was the original presiding deity over what we now call Easter, and or at least that is what it is based upon, of course, the Ostara holiday, the fertility rites, the fertility rituals and worship and honoring that took place on that particular holiday in honor of that particular goddess. A rabbit should be consumed to, after you remove the energy from this curse with this bath, to once again take this celebratory fortune, luck, and abundance energy back in you. So she basically utilized cooking magic to finalize this curse removal, because the curse did also irritatingly state that everything that someone of this lineage would do would not succeed. Now, of course, this was not nearly as flawless as it was portrayed to be, of course, because I have done plenty of things that succeeded. But the things that mattered to me the most, despite certain things that I would do, contracts that I made with deities, all of this is, of course, outlined in my Lagus video. But something would come in, like I would receive a shit ton of money in some way, shape, or form, and then immediately afterwards, the air conditioning in the house broke, the car broke down, etc., etc. So whenever I would take a step forward, there would be something that would cause a step or two steps back to basically just facilitate that curse. And this was, of course, part of the reason why I wanted to get rid of it so bad, and why Lagos brought it to the fore with the help of the deity Njord, of course, who was also a very paramount, prominent figure in my removal of this curse, along with the Egyptian goddess Isis, who was to be a goddess of magic, a goddess of healing, just like Odin, and to a certain extent also, of course, the Morgan, who was also a deity of magic, who was also a deity of rebirth, transformation, etc. And the goddess Air, our own handmaiden of Frigg, the Lady Frigg, the wife of Odin, who was, of course, a healing deity. So I enlisted the help of these and the help of Heimdall, though not directly in conjunction with the other deities, but more as a more distant secondary backup to protect and watch over my finances in so much as possible for him to do this. And enlisted, of course, the help of my own helping spirits, etc. And with these baths and with this final ritual, this final food ritual, this celebratory ritual on the day of the celebration of a harvest, on the day of a celebration for a deity who presides over the harvest, and who presides over self-actualization, who presides over development and empowerment of the self in that sense, especially if you are a male, of course, because if you are a woman, that would be more Freya's area. So for me, this was a very fitting, very symbolic, and a very predestined day almost a couple of days ago. So in celebration of these events, I hereby present to you the video on ritual baths, and that was the purpose, of course, of my introduction, to let you know that the bath rituals can be very, very powerful, very potent tools. Because, of course, I am aware that the deities that I asked for help with were paramount, as the help of my friend was. Um, in removing myself from this curse, or removing the curse from myself, I should say. It was also, of course, the baths and the perseverance and patience that I had in exercising these rituals that facilitated this, because without the baths in the physical, nothing would have happened in the spiritual or with my energy, or at least not to the extent that it did. So, I mean, the ritual baths, and I have taken several of them before. I mean, I have done several series of baths, several rituals to facilitate the removal of certain curses, of certain negative attachments, of certain entities that were basically just utilizing me as food source, as kind of parasitic spiritual organisms, I suppose, in order to remove them. This bath has been very effective. These kinds of baths have been very effective in this. But even to a curse of this magnitude, they have really packed quite a punch. So, what is a ritual bath, or what are ritual baths? Ritual baths are a form of often hybridized earth and water magic. Now, of course, this is the case in my perception because water is the element in which you sit. Water is a very cleansing element. Water is a purifying element. It washes away filth. It makes us clean. It makes us feel good. It is a element that, in limited quantities for humans, of course, is a very empowering, enriching, and sometimes even great fun element to work with. And earth is, of course, expressed through the utilization of herbs, through utilization of plants, flowers, etc., that one will use in these baths. And oftentimes there is, in fact, an element of earth and, an element of air and fire added as well, in the form of incense, in the form of burning certain things and releasing smoke in the air, and in the form of candles that one burns alongside the taking of the bath, respectively. So, a ritual bath is usually done to either cleanse oneself from negative energy, to undo someone having cursed us, to undo a hex or a crossing out or a jinx or some other sort of hostile negative thing that is currently plaguing us. And this can be as simple as a ritual bath in order to open us up to more abundance. So it does not necessarily have to be a cleansing in that sense, that it necessarily has to address something that is negatively affecting us. This is usually what I have used it for, because I utilize the element of water oftentimes in such a manner, but at the same time, this does not necessarily have to be the case. Let that be very clear here. If you are someone who really, really likes the concept of water rituals, of ritual baths, etc., then you will find that bathing for a certain amount of days. For example, 7 is often considered to be a lucky number in our tradition nowadays, and even in the Elder Fufark system, the system which I work with, the ancient Germanic tribes, the 7th rune in the Elder Fufark is Gebo. Now, Gebo means gift. It is also a kiss. It is a bond of friendship. It is a link of interconnectivity of a positive nature, of friendships, of romance, of marriages, etc., etc. So, Gabo is in that sense also a lucky number 7. I mean, if you see the rune of Gabo appear in an upright position in a rune reading, and it is usually in the future or in the present or something, that usually indicates something very positive, something that you have received as gift. And therefore, for example, if you were to take ritual baths to, I don't know, improve your abundance, improve your luck, improve your finances, or something along those lines, now what you would do is you would take 7 baths with herbs and plants and stuff like that that are representative of luck, of abundance, of finances. And then you would bathe in this for a certain amount of time, and then you would leave. to do it again the next day until all 7 days have passed. In that sense, you can take these ritual baths as a sort of long, drawn-out magic ritual, as a spell of a sort. So, like I said, ritual baths are usually taken for a specific amount of time, or a specified amount of time, I should say. The usual amount of baths usually taken will be of magically significant numbers, such as 3, or like I said just now, 7. 9 is a very common thing, 13, 18, stuff like that. Now, in theory, it does not have to be as rigid as that. It may be that a certain approach requires a certain number, or that something will merely, if you are of a more practical mindset, suppose that a curse takes only 6 baths to remove instead of 7 or 9. What is the point of, taking 9 baths? On the other hand, you could take it more of the antibiotic prescription approach, where it says even if your symptoms stop, don't stop taking it until the entire prescription has been used up. So that is, of course, also a possibility that you can approach it from different angles. Now, personally, I am more of the nature that it is better to be safe than sorry. So if I feel like everything is cleared up after the 6th day, and I originally felt that 9 days were necessary, then I will continue with all 9 days. I recommend, by the way, that you do this just in case. But at the end of the day, I also understand that magic and energy and the way it works is all very flexible, and it is about will and intent. So I am going to, at the end of the day, leave it up to you, the practitioner, the viewer, to decide how you exactly want to carry this out. So what I would recommend if you are going to take these baths is that you schedule them for specific times during the day. And I also recommend that you take them at night after dark. Because the reason for this, my personal interpretation and justification for this is that water is a lunar element. So that means that it is also more related to the night energy. So oftentimes, and we will get back to the lunar thing, what I feel is best is that if you schedule your baths, for example, at 10 p.m. On the first day, is that it would be best, ideal, in fact, if you could take them roughly around 10 p.m. every single night. Now, I understand that this may not be necessarily possible for those of you who have flexible work schedules, who are on call, or who are in some way, shape, or form otherwise enrolled in a job or education that requires a more flexible approach to life, I suppose. So, what I would generally aim for is 1 bath every 24 hours. So, that means that you will take 1 bath every single day. And if it means that on the first night you take a bath at 10 p.m., but you can only take a bath at 7 p.m. because you have to go to work at 9 or 10 the next day, then so be it. Take that bath at 7. You'll have 2 hours. That should be plenty enough time for facilitating the energies and rituals and magics, and still should give you some time to get ready for whatever it is that you're doing later that night. If you need to do the 3rd bath at 11 p.m., so be it. That is all well and good. However, try to aim as close as possible to these structured times that you have set for yourself, where and if possible. That is my recommendation. Use some form of structure, use some form of ritualized thing, so that it's, the weight of it is a bit more, enforced in your mind, I suppose. It, in my experience, feeds one's intent to do that, to make it a more ritualized experience, I suppose. Now, I just said that we would be getting back on the lunar aspect of things. Oftentimes, a ritual bath will be scheduled to coincide with a particular phase of the moon. Now, oftentimes, what I have seen and what I have experienced and what I have utilized is that the last day of a bath is to coincide on a full moon, or the first day of a bath is supposed to coincide on a new moon, depending on what you're trying to do. If it's a new start spell, or if it's a new a fresh start kind of thing, or if it's an abundance thing, or something like that. So, for example, what you could do is, and this is just from the top of my head, this is not even in my script, this is just me throwing something out there. So, for example, you're looking for a bath that cleanses out all the negativity from your old life. Say you just got divorced or something, and you just want to clear all that filth away, you just want to begin anew. What you would do is, I don't know, take 7 or 9 baths, and then make sure that the last day, the last bath that you take falls on the new moon. So in other words, after you're done with that final bath, you will have a new moon cycle, a new beginning, and that then symbolizes your new fresh start. So you can, clear things out and begin with a clean slate. That is, as I said, just a suggestion. Maybe your interpretation of such things are different. That is wholly up to you. It is wholly up to your intent, your interpretation of such things, etc. So, how do I determine what kind of time frame to use, which kind of lunar energy to utilize, what lunar cycle stage do I align my baths with? Well, I would recommend that you either use your intuition, that you consult spirits or deities for this matter, consult a experienced shaman, witch, priest, what have you, to this end, that that you trust, and that you can count on to give you accurate advice. So consult with the spirit realms, consult with your own intuition, what feels right to you. Because that is a very important aspect of this. If it doesn't feel right to you, you are subconsciously hindering your own magic, of course, as is the case with pretty much all sorts of magical practice. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't sit well with you, you are likely going to subconsciously block the results. So in terms of doing deep baths, on what days to do them, I would say that you should do all baths all the time, everywhere, if you engage in this kind of ritual series of baths consecutively, without exception. I have never ever seen, although I suppose in theory that these kinds of baths could exist, where you skip a day in between series or in between the taking of certain baths in a series. So that is to say, if you take 9 baths and you take the first 4 baths, and then you take the 5th day off, and then you take another 5 baths, that is, in my experience, generally less effective than just taking the baths in one slew. Now, what can happen, and I suppose that this is possible, and I suppose that this is actually a useful practical application of it, now that I think about it. Again, this is also not in my script, but now that I think about it, this might actually be a good thing. In the case of my own personal curse, I mentioned that I took 2 series of 9 baths instead of 18 baths straight. Now, this was because we originally thought that 9 baths would have been enough. It wasn't. However, the first series of 9 baths sufficiently weakened the curse to the point where it was more easily addressed by the second series of 9 baths. So what is possible is that if you are for some reason incapable of energetically handling the cleansing out of a very big curse in one series, which is, I suppose, possible, it might be wise actually to plan for yourselves a certain series of baths. And even then, to get back on what I originally said, I still would not recommend, however, to break up the series. So if you plan 2 series of 9 baths, to use my own example, do not break the series. So don't take 3 baths, then 1 day off, and then the remaining 6. Don't ever do that. Take the set amount of baths that you decide upon beforehand and perform them in consecutive days, on consecutive days. So take every day, every bath that you need to take. The end. Do not interrupt a series. However, what you can do is you can split up the series of baths and say, I'm going to take 9 baths this week, and the other 2 remaining days, of course. So these 9 days are going to be my first series. Then I'm going to wait a week to adjust and to calibrate my energy, to regain my strength, to catch my breath. And then I'm going to take another 9 baths as a second series. That is possible if you, for some reason, think that you cannot handle, or if you, perhaps, as in my case, underestimated the strength of a particular curse. That is a possibility, and that is something that, in fact, that I would think would be very useful if you are dealing with a very significant curse like I was dealing with. So, a ritual bath will often, like I said, be constructed through the usage of herbs and oftentimes also liquids. For example, for your standard uncrossing bath template, you will be using probably these two herbs pretty much every time, hyssop and rue. So they're cleansing herbs, they're purifying herbs, they're herbs that wash away filth. Um, you know, Oftentimes you will see that such baths call for magically charged salt, perhaps black salt, to extract and ward off negativity and evil. Sometimes pink Himalayan salt to, extract negative energy and provide a more loving, positive, uplifting energy in return. And perhaps you'd add some fresh healing herbs like lemon peel, lemon juice, stuff like that. Maybe some rosemary, which is also said to be a healing herb. Maybe you will want to use some mugwort for protection to make sure that the curse doesn't, like lash out when you treat it, or at least lashes out as minimally as possible, to make sure that you are protected from further such rituals, etc., etc. For example, if you were to specifically undo a curse or crossing or hex or something specifically related to your finances, you'd use orange peel, orange juice, a whole fresh orange, or perhaps a piece of a whole fresh orange just cut off, as a replenisher agent, as a purifier agent, as a positivity inducing agent. Orange peel specifically is often cited as being a finance assistant, finance inducer, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you'd use some juniper berries, stuff like that. So if you were to hit a streak of bad luck, for example, and I'm just giving you ideas here on how to perform some basic ritual baths. If you were to undo a bad luck spell, or if you just merely want to just increase your luck in general, even if you're not, like I said earlier, not addressing a curse and you just want to perform a water ritual, you'd add an herbal form or even the liquid form of Abra Camino, which is translated literally into road opener. Um, you know, so that will assist you in opening yourself up to abundance, to wealth, to finance, to luck, to positive energy, stuff like that. And utilizing salt in baths will often serve as an extractor and purifying agent, like I said, regarding negative, hostile energies that may be plaguing you, that have been inserted into you, whether you at one time consented to it, perhaps, or whether you, were just attacked by someone through magic, through baneful workings, etc., etc. Now, one thing of note here, which brings me to a very interesting portion of this particular topic, which there seem to be a few schools of thought on. Now, I'm someone who plays a little loose with rules sometimes, and I find that works for me. But some people say that if you take a bath to extract something negative from you, that immediately afterwards you are to take another bath to replenish positivity. So in those cases, what you would do is you would take 18 baths total over a period of 9 days. The first bath that you would take on a given day would be an uncursing or uncrossing bath. You would draw out the negative energies from yourself. You would extract them. You would use herbs that would remove negative energy, etc., etc. And after that, you would drain the bath. You would scrub it out a little bit. You would rinse it. You would make sure that it's clean. And then you take a second bath. And that bath will serve to replenish positive energy, to reinsert this, to kickstart your positive vibes, etc. So in that bath, you would be using things such as, like I said earlier, in the case of a finance curse, for example, you would use lemon peel to kickstart your finances. You would use perhaps some patchouli root, which is also related to health, to wealth and abundance, excuse me. You would use honey to, depending on the kind of honey, because there are certain kinds of honey that are best suited to particular topics and goals, of course. So you would use honey to, revitalize yourself, to add some sweetness, to add some positive attitude, because of course part of a curse is affecting your attitude, so that you start drawing in more negativity through manifestation. That is usually part of a curse. So, and especially curses that target things like finances, abundance, wealth, luck, happiness and romance and love and sex and stuff like that. That is a very common thing to target. Let someone destroy themselves. So that is a very important, integral portion of a healing process, of course, that you absolutely should not overlook, because just removing a curse is really only half the work. I mean, in most cases, the damage has already been done, so you will want to take extra steps to also heal and not just extract. You want to replenish what was lost with something benevolent and positive. So you would use herbs that increase your finances, increase your luck, and that would empower you to manifest positive things. Now, the other school of thought is, why don't I just dump them all in one bath? And that is indeed actually what I did with these other 18 baths that I just cited as a part of the uncursing for this familial curse. I added herbs like, mugwort and rosemary, which is protection and healing. I added lemon, which is also a cleansing, purifying, agent. But at the same time, lemon, because it's yellow, and yellow is a color in magic often used for happiness and for joy, and in some cases gold, as in wealth, gold as in the material gold, which is historically speaking associated with financial wealth. And I would also use honey in that same bath. So what that accomplished was that I would feel very, very sick as the curse was being drawn out of me. I would puke and dry heave and sweat and start shaking and stuff like that. And at the same time, by the time I left the bath, I would feel refreshed, if somewhat tired, and I would feel a lot more positive afterwards. As you can probably tell in this video, I am actually feeling, despite the fact that I'm rather tired, I'm feeling very elated and positive and kind of full of energy at the same time. It's quite a weird sensation, because you have to understand I was born with this curse in my blood, in my DNA, because I also not only added blood to the bath, of course, to symbolize that this was what was needing to be purified. I also added strands of my hair to denote my genes, my DNA, if you will. So that is something that you should, by the way, also keep in mind. There may be baths that call for the adding of blood, that may call for the adding of graveyard dirt in the case of ancestral, issues that may need to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. Um, Stuff like that. So, I mean, this is just a very basic setup that I'm handing to you, and you can go as ascetic or as opulent with this as you want, and as long as you can afford it, basically. I mean, all in all, if one really wishes to engage in ritual baths and wishes to use those herbs in them, which I do recommend, because that's half of the reason that you're taking them, because of the herbs. Um, you know, in modern society, with the internet, with everything that we have at our disposal, you can literally put together an uncursing bath, a ritual bath, in 5 to 10 minutes, because you can, look up, Wikipedia and other websites that list herbs and other sorts of plants and all sorts of stuff that you will need to successfully carry out a uncursing or ritual bath of whatever, in whatever capacity, through the utilization of all these things. I mean, it literally will take you 5 to 10 minutes to look all this up. All you need to do is, just financial herbs, or herbs that attract finance, or you type in juniper berries, magical or metaphysical properties in Google, and you'll have your answer within a couple seconds. So, I mean, that is really just a ritual bath is really easy to put together. It's a very effective form of magic, especially in my opinion in the cleansing department, because I have other ways usually through which I utilize my attraction stuff, shall we say. But for those of you so inclined, I imagine that this will be a very beneficial, if somewhat time-consuming. I'm not going to lie, because that is a downside of a ritual bath. It is oftentimes rather time-consuming. I mean, you do need to prepare it, you do need to add all the ingredients to it, you'll likely want to drain out all the herbs afterwards so that it doesn't clog your sink, etc., etc. So, or so that it doesn't, clog your drain, I should say, not your sink. I mean, it could clog your sink if you try to wash yourself in the sink, but that seems a little impractical. Anyway, you can basically just put together a ritual bath in 10 minutes. Go to the store or your local metaphysical store, go on Amazon.com. By the way, not affiliated with in any way, shape, or form, just citing that as an option where you can, find herbs and roots and all that stuff for cheap. And you can literally within a day or two be on your way in getting rid of what it is that you want to get rid of or attract what you want to attract. And like I said in the beginning, oftentimes you will want to combine some fire and candle magic with baths. Candles that have colors and or scents are actually very practical for the usage in ritual bath magic. So in most cases, when you are taking a healing bath specifically, I would utilize a blue candle, preferably more lighter blue, but it depends on the circumstance and situation, and a white candle. Now the reason for this is that I feel that a white candle represents unity, oneness, wholeness, purity, just, you being your true untainted self, if you will. And that is a very important symbolism right there, because that's all that of course is. They don't in and of themselves hold any magical properties in that sense, but it is your attribution of will, of intent, of focus that you give these candles that are facilitating the energies. So, and if you want to go that far, white light, when it fractures, has in and of itself all the visible colors to the human eye contained within it when it fractures. So, and then blue would be considered, well, of course, the representation of the element of water, what you're utilizing to cleanse yourself with. And that is usually seen as a color of healing, as an element of healing, as an energy of cleansing, as an energy of purification. And therefore, I think that this is kind of a, part and parcel lineup for any ritual bath. But again, it does depend on you as the practitioner, what you feel comfortable with, what you feel right with. So for example, you want to remove a finance curse. The way I would do that is, I don't know, set up a blue, white, green, and maybe a yellow candle. So that's a very basic lineup, right? 4 candles, save as much finances as possible, because if you have a finance curse on you, likelihood is you're in a bit of a financial bind, you're in a bit of a precarious situation with your money. You want to spend as little money as possible. So what I would do is white, purity, blue, cleansing, water, etc. And then you have green for your abundance, for your wealth, for your money, for your finances, represent your dollar bills. And then you have yellow, representing happiness, newfound joy in life, representing gold, etc., etc. And then you have basically a very short but sweet statement of intent in the form of colors. This is the energy, this is what I want to do with it. You cleanse me, make me pure, I will now draw abundance, wealth, money, and happiness and gold. If you line it up in that order, well, there you go. It's a very basic, short utilization of candle/fire magic, because I do consider candle magic a form of fire magic because it utilizes fire, obviously. So, basically, you could place this with your bath, light these candles at the same time, and even use them as measurement for how long you are supposed to be in the bath, because in a lot of metaphysical stores, you will find hoodoo or voodoo candles, which are knotted, and you can burn them for a certain amount per day, and then the one knot will have burned away, and then you put it out, and then you can burn the other knots the next day, and so on and so forth. Now, what I usually do is I buy myself a couple packs of spell candles, or chime candles as they're also called. They're relatively small, they're a couple inches long, and they're very thin. And then you place them into holders, and then you light one per color every day. So, for example, in the example that I just cited, if you take 3 baths, so that is 3 times 4 candles, that is 3 candles of every color. So you will have 3 white candles, 3 blue candles, 3 green candles, and 3 yellow candles. That is enough candles to cover every single day and to have one of each candle every day. So if you were to do a very quick, finance uncursing that way, you'd have enough candles. You'd burn one every night, and by the time that one candle, when all these candles have burned out, you will then know that it is time to finish that particular bath for that particular night, once all 4 of your chime candles have been burned out. Now, lastly, I mentioned earlier air magic, which is, in my opinion, something that you could utilize through the burning of stuff, which is also, of course, inherently partially fire magic because you utilize fire in it. However, it is air magic in the sense that you release smoke and in that you release scent, and this is also of import in that particular ritual. So, what you would perhaps in the very basic rendition of the bath that I just suggested, suppose that we continue on with this finance uncursing bath, it could literally be as simple as you grabbing an abalone shell, filling it with earth, putting a self-activated charcoal disc in it, and then putting white sage on it after you lit the charcoal disc. And that then means that you are releasing white sage smoke in the air, which is, as most of you probably know, a purifying smoke that it releases. Even secular science acknowledges that it basically kills bacteria. And you will basically release cleansing smoke into the air, which you can then utilize as part of your uncursing bath. Now, alternatively, you could burn incense sticks, you could burn resins, you could burn oils, what have you. It is all viable. You can burn other herbs, bay leaves, what have you. It is all possible. The possibilities are just about as endless as there are herbs and other materials that you can burn and utilize in such a manner. Now, regarding candle magic, I will be making a separate video specifically dedicated to that because I do utilize candles a lot in my work as well. So I feel that that is best served as a part of a separate video. As a very last bit of information, and I'm throwing this more in as a sort of like a bonus, really. Utilize perhaps some tea in your bath, in your uncursing bath. Now, for example, matcha, which is a Japanese kind of green tea, is a very potent, cleansing, energizing kind of tea that they have lately been promoting a lot for its health benefits. And from an energetic, spiritual perspective, I can attest that it is actually very, very powerful, very cleansing, and you may decide to use this as part of a purification bath, as part of an uncursing bath, or as part of a road opener bath in some way, shape, or form. So utilize teas perhaps because this also is a form of water magic. It is also part of you cycling and filtering out nastiness through the utilization of water energy. And yeah, green tea, for example, is also another great example. Just regular, good old green tea is a hell of a magical tool to use, and you may use this alongside with ritual baths, of course. And not only that, I mean, if you're going to sit in the bath for 2 hours and you may get thirsty in some way, shape, or form, then this would be ideal to also combat that. And that is pretty much all I have to say on ritual baths and some basics on how to execute and facilitate them. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching. My next 2 videos will be videos on the deity Morrigan and the deity Inari Okami specifically. I'm not quite sure in what order I will be uploading those. It depends on how my recordings turn out and how long they take to edit, etc. But these are my next 2 videos that I have planned in my Gods and Goddesses series. So thank you all so much for watching, and Alu is Urki. May it be of help. Hell.